Welcome back, everyone. Next speaker is going to provide some very specific guidelines to help make that a wonderful journey. Please give a warm MDRT welcome to Angajan.
Good morning. Last 50 years or so, it has been an era of technological advancement. Talking about the technological advancement, there was an international conference taken place. There were many countries who were participating, including the Americans, the Britain, the Indian, the Chinese, etc. In one particular table, there were 3 scientists talking about the scientific development in their respective country. So it happened to be an American scientist, a British scientist, and the third one was an Indian scientist talking about the scientific development. So the American scientist was talking about their rocket sciences. He said, our rockets have reached the topmost portion of the solar system, nothing beyond it. Very surprised, the Indian and the Brits asked, you mean the topmost portion of the solar system, nothing beyond it? Then the American said, well, may not be the topmost, slightly below. Then it was the chance of the English scientists. The Brits said, in England, we developed the submarines. Our submarines have reached the deepest portion of the Atlantic Ocean. And very surprised, the American and the Indian asked, you mean the deepest portion of the ocean? Then the Brits said, well, may not be the deepest, slightly above. Then it was a chance of the Indian scientist, very primitive in the scientific development about 50 or 70 years before, didn't have much to talk about. He sat there and thought for a moment and said, in India, we have developed the technology of eating through the nose. What? Eating through the nose? Asked the American and the Brits. Then the Indian said, well, may not be through the nose, slightly below the nose, he said. Friends, it is not a laughing matter, it is a crying matter. What I mean is that if you observe the world, you find a strange paradox. The paradox that you observe is that on one hand, you find an incredible degree of technological and scientific advancement taking place in the world, while on the other hand, you find stress and stress-related diseases and depression is increasing at an alarming proportion, at an epidemic proportion. One of the things that happened to most of us is that as you take up more and more responsibilities, our mental pressure also increases along with that. Does that happen to you? Why is that as you take up more responsibilities, very often when your business increases, your stress and mental pressure also increases, and many people think that stress and depression is a natural corollary of success. That need not be so. The more progress they make, the harder they have to work, the more success they achieve, the stress level increases, the more technology it increases, the depression increases as well. In fact, last 20 years or so, the death due to depression has increased double. America alone, according to statistics, there are about 20 million people suffering from depression. Folks, what I'm trying to get at is that on one hand you find the technological advancement, on the other hand there is happiness is reducing. Now the question here is that as you progress materially, can you maintain the equanimity and serenity? Can you maintain the dynamism of a CEO, at the same time maintain the serenity of a saint? If you are, you can claim yourself to be a successful individual. But that doesn't happen very often. Our mental pressure increases. Why? Because the focus of attention today has always been in the external world. We have developed the technology so much so that we have explored the lunar landscape. We know what's happening on the surface of the moon. We know what's happening on the surface of Mars. In the bargain, we totally neglected our own inner geographies. Professional success without personal success becomes meaningless success. So how can we combine professional success along with the personal success? While the Western country was talking about the technological advancement, the ancient sages and saints in India produced the oldest management school in the world. The oldest management school in the world was in India, in the deep recesses of Himalayan jungles. The thinkers and sages and saints taught the world how to manage yourself before you can manage anything in the world. That explains why some of the top successful CEOs of the world are college dropouts, school dropouts. So professional success today, there is an imbalance between the professional success and personal success. There's a great success in the external world, the high performance. But on the other hand, you find there is stress, ill health, divorce. Like I mentioned, stress-related diseases is increasing at epidemic proportion. Blood sugar, blood pressure, constipation, indigestion, arthritis, knee pain, migraine, you name it, a whole host of them. So there is an imbalance. Now, when you do not take care of yourself, that is bringing personal success, success becomes meaningless. There will be a halt. In fact, there is what I would call a disaster in slow motion taking place. The world reacts to disaster only when there is a sudden disaster. Supposing there is a tsunami, God forbid, and 10,000s of people are dying, the world wake up, but the world doesn't seem to wake up. The disaster taking place in slow motion. What I mean by disaster in slow motion, to give you an analogy, imagine you put a frog in a trough of hot water. The frog instinctively jumps out of the trough to escape. But if you put a frog in a trough of cold water, normal water, and gradually increase the temperature, the frog doesn't realize the increase of temperature. Eventually, the frog dies, perishes in the bucket. Disaster in slow motion. Now, if you do not take an about turn and look within and find out what exactly is happening within, chances are one could end up like this, where there is success, but there's no personal success. So how to combine this? We need to understand two aspects of life. One is the standard of life, the other is standard of living. Now, you as financial consultant, you educate your clients about increasing the standard of living and how they can sustain it. But what about the standard of life? Now, what is standard of living and what is standard of life? Standard of living is your economical success, increasing material wealth, etc. Your amenities and facilities, luxuries and comforts, etc. On the other hand, standard of life is all about bringing the level of serenity and equanimity, bringing spiritual component in life, so that you enjoy your marital life, you enjoy your health, you enjoy your personal success also. But very often it is not balanced. There's an imbalance. So how do we bring about that success? You got to understand what is life. If I were to ask you what is life, a very common, a universal definition of life. Life is a series of experiences. From morning till evening, from birth to death, from womb to the tomb, from creation to cremation, you go through different types of experiences, that's all. The nature of your experiences determines the nature of your life. As your experiences, so your life. If your experiences are happy, life is happy. If your experiences are unhappy, life is unhappy. If your experiences are slow and dull, life is dull. As your experiences, so your life. So if you want to improve the quality of your life, in fact, every one of us here are interested in improving the quality of our life. What I mean by quality of life is that you want material success. At the same time, we want the peace of mind. But very often what happens is when we increase our material success, peace of mind seems to be disappearing gradually. So can we combine both? For which we got to understand what life is all about. It's a series of experiences. An experience is composed of two factors. One is you, the individual, and the other is the world. When the subject, you, the individual, contact the world, then an experience is born. So if you want to improve your experience, you got to improve yourself, you got to improve the world. If you are improved and the world is improved, experiences are improved. If the experiences are improved, life is improved. Now, if you want to improve your experiences, you got to analyze what is the world composed of. The world can be broadly categorized into three. That is wealth, people, and nature. There are several ways to define the world, of course. In order to improve the world, there are three sets of scientists. From time immemorial, they have been working on improving the world, and they've done a fantastic job in improving the world, materially or technologically. Take for example, communication. What was one of the oldest means of communication? They trained pigeons to convey message from one king to the other. That was Twitter then. That is the way they tweeted. Now today, click of a button, next split seconds, the message can reach any part of the world. Now this worldly success, material success, is achieved by the collective effort of the three sets of scientists. They are the economists, politicians, and scientists. They worked on improving the world, collected data, gathered information, and they retired into their own laboratories, researched the data they collected, and they established a body of knowledge. The body of knowledge laid down by the economists is called economics, and politics, and science. The world could not be the way it is, would not have been possible unless the collective effort of these scientists. Now, what I want you to think about, ladies and gentlemen, is that despite these people improve the world the way it is, you find our happiness has deteriorated at an alarming rate, especially if you look at the cities, etc. Our happiness seems to be reducing. Now, this was understood by another set of thinkers. They knew by merely improving the world outside, you cannot increase the happiness of people. They did not focus upon the external world. They focused upon something more crucial, that is the subject, the individual. They collected data pertaining to one's own self, gathered information, and retired into their own laboratories, and they established laws and principles pertaining to their self. That is called spirituality, or I would call it the science of the self. The philosophers, sages, and saints, prophets, they focus upon oneself. If you are improved and the world is improved, experiences are improved. If the experiences are improved, life is improved. Now, just as the objective scientists discovered what the world is, what did the subjective scientists discover? They helped the people to realize what they are. Who am I? What is my purpose? Like our earlier speaker, Mayu, and I'm proud to say my now compatriot, said that you got to find yourself, you got to discover your inner purpose, the inner self. They discovered that the inner self is composed of four basic instruments, four basic tools. The four instruments that you use to perform your job. When you come to your workplace in the morning, what do you carry along with you to perform your job? Apart from your lunchbox, of course. You basically carry with you your inner self. That is connecting with your inner self. You got to connect with your inner self. Your inner self is composed of basically four tools. At the outset, you have the body. Beyond the body, within the body, you have the three dynamic equipments, powerful instruments which drive the body. That is your mind, intellect, and the ego. Beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect is the spirit or the soul within. The mind, intellect, and the ego is the software of human behavior. It is the software of human action. So if you want to change your life, you got to bring about the change in your software. Therefore, you got to find your identity. You got to know who you are. The mind, intellect, and the ego, and the spirit with it. You know, in China, there is a particular kind of bamboo. It is often referred to as Chinese bamboo. If you plant a sapling of this bamboo, for about 4 long years, you will not see any significant growth in the bamboo. You can put water, fertilizer, nourishment, you can do everything, no progress at all. After 4 years, 5th year, within 2 months, within 60 days, the bamboo shoots off to a height of 70 to 90 feet tall within 60 days. Now, what is the bamboo up to the first 4 years? the bamboo was growing inside the ground. The bamboo is sending its roots in all directions. And once the bamboo is firmly established on the ground, only then it begins to grow outside. We got to be as wise as the bamboo. But today what's happening is the world is so much anxious to explore the world outside without gaining a mastery over oneself. That is simply put, self-mastery. If the bamboo were to grow outside before it gains a firm ground on the earth, even a small wind can topple the bamboo. But the bamboo doesn't make the mistake, but we do. Today what happens is the universities and education institutions are churning out intellectual centipedes who have got more knowledge and skill, but their performance pygmies very often. Why? Because there is focuses upon the external world. So you got to understand your inner self. Now what is the body, what is the mind, what is the intellect and the ego? Your mind is a seat of emotion. Mind contains innumerable desires, impulses, attachment. Mind full of desires and emotions with powerful resources, if you do not know how to manage them, they become an impediment. Friends, remember, you have one enemy in your life. You have one impediment, you have one obstacle, and that is yourself. But you have one aid, you have one friend who will be with you all the time, and that is yourself. If you are a master of yourself, you are your own friend. If you are not a master of yourself, your own desires and emotions and likes and dislikes and impulses become an enemy. Emotions are a very powerful tool. In fact, according to statistics, what really sells, including the insurance, is emotion. You got to be a master of your emotion if you want to be a successful entrepreneur in the field of insurance. At the same time, you got to be a master of yourself as well. Emotions are very powerful. In fact, one of the most contagious disease in the world, if you think it is AIDS, you got it wrong. AIDS is not out, it's infectious. But something far more infectious than AIDS is your own emotion. Emotions are highly contagious. In fact, emotional contagion can take place even across the continent. When you send a message, a text message to your family back into your country or wherever they are, just a message, I love you. That message is carrying an emotion. They feel nice. Your emotion is communicated. Now, can you imagine if the emotion can be communicated across the continent? Now, in the closed environment of a family or in the work environment, emotion it's highly contagious. I would like to call this emotional contagion as ETD, emotionally transmitted diseases. Emotions are highly contagious. Similarly, desire. We have desire for success, but we do not know how to desire. Having the desire is one thing, but to know how to desire is quite different. Just because you have the desire for something, that doesn't mean that you can achieve it. The desire, which is an energy, has to be given a proper direction. That ability to direct your emotions, direct your desires, feelings, etc., that equipment is called the intellect. Intellect is the capacity to think. It is the reasoning ability. It is the decision-making ability. And ego is the claimant within you. It is that aspect in you which claims that it's my money, it's my family, it's my house. So these arrogations are done by the ego. Now, ego, by the way, most people believe that the ego is something negative, something detrimental. But no, when your ego is not governed or controlled by the intellect, that is when the ego becomes detrimental. When your ego is controlled by the intellect, your ego takes the form of self-confidence, self-esteem, which is a very essential component of success. Ego is the cause. Ego is the basis of self-esteem. A person with a controlled ego, he says, I can do it, I'm very good at it. A person with uncontrolled ego manifests as arrogance and he says, only I can do it, only I'm good at it. Now, when he says, only I can do it, that is what I would call arrogance. He excludes everybody else. But when the other person with a controlled ego, when he says, I can do it, that is self-confidence, self-esteem. In fact, if you analyze the lives of some of the most successful leaders of the world, you find that they used the ego constructively. One of the most admired leaders of the world, Mahatma Gandhi, he said, it is my right to be free in my own country. Now, when a person makes an assertion like that, it is the ego which says, but it is controlled ego, benevolent ego. So you got to be a master of your inner self. Now, mind, uncontrolled mind without the sound spiritual value has a tendency, a deadly tendency. Such a mind is constantly craving for instant gratification, instant pleasure. If your mind is programmed with the idea of instant gratification, you got a problem. As opposed to delayed gratification. The mind is constantly craving for instant gratification. Imagine, here is a diabetic patient, a chronic diabetic. He has been advised by the doctor not to touch sweet. One afternoon, when his wife is not at home, the man slowly sneaks in the kitchen. If the wife is there, she keeps a tab on his sweet eating habits. So he slowly sneaks in the kitchen. He opens the fridge. When he sees the fridge there, he sees plenty of sweets inside. When he sees the sweet, the mind is craving to eat the sweet. He says, come on, man, get a piece before she comes. When the mind is craving to eat the sweet, there is something else in him which says, don't touch it, don't eat it, that's not the right thing to do. That faculty which is governing you into the right direction, that is the faculty of intellect, the reasoning ability. At the moment, most of our decisions are governed by instant gratification as opposed to delayed gratification. If your life is programmed with the idea of instant gratification, it is my benefit, that is a recipe for disaster. Whereas if you're thinking in terms of delayed gratification, but the mind has a tendency craving for instant gratification. When the mind is craving for the quick pleasure, the intellect tries to refrain. That is when you experience the pain of abstinence. Remember, life has pain. Even the happiest person in the world has got pain. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Suffering is your creation. The world will offer challenges. The world will offer difficulties. You cannot prevent it. But suffering is your response to pain. Talking about pain, there is a saying that we often say that behind every successful man, there is a... I didn't say that, all right? But I would say it quite differently. It says, behind every successful man, there is a pain. Talking about pain, what pain? There are two types of pains that we go through, only two types of pain. They are the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. I'm sure the picture there is very familiar to you. The pain of discipline and the pain of regret. At every choice that you make, you have to apply this principle. Every decision, there is a pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The pain of discipline is painful in the beginning. It gives you instant pleasure. The pain of regret is painful later. The pain of discipline, you are the master. Pain of regret, you are a slave, you are a victim. Pain of discipline, you have a conscious choice over it to go through or not to go through. Pain of regret, you have no choice but to helplessly go through it. And the law is that when you go through a pain helplessly, the suffering is much, much more than the actual pain. That's the law of life. So who causes your suffering? Not the world. Today people believe that it's the world that makes me unhappy. He made me happy. She made me angry. Nobody can make you happy except yourself. Therefore, personal success is the very foundation of professional success. You got to be a master of yourself. That is what the ancient rishis and sages and saints, seers and prophets in India taught the world how to manage oneself. The pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Pain of regret, you have no choice over it. You have to go through it. The choice is yours. Now, personal success, the crux of personal success, like I mentioned to you earlier, is the capacity of your intellect. The I there represents the intellect. the capacity of your intellect to keep your mind, ego, and the body into a proper direction. Intellect is the most important component of your personality. It is the faculty that governs your emotions, governs your desires, governs your likes and dislikes, governs your impulses. Today, most of our decisions are governed by likes and dislikes, and what you like is not necessarily what is good for you, and what you dislike is not necessarily what's bad for you. Take, for example, food. How many of us like health food? Health food is not palatable to the tongue, but junk food, we love it. We like what we do. What you like is not necessarily what is good for you. Therefore, your intellect got to be developed to manage a control, mastery over the mind and ego. That is called personal success. Without personal success, life can be a mess. Without intellect governing your emotions and ego and impulses, it is like leaving a child at home without adult supervision. I'm sure those of you who are parents here must have experienced. It would look something like this. Folks, you may look at the picture and laugh at it, right? Now, if you analyze the world today, you find there is a lot of people who have achieved incredible degree of professional success, but their life was a mess. They had everything that a human being can aspire for. Millions and millions of dollars. They have millions and millions of admirers all over the world. They had the looks, they had the beauty, they had everything human being can imagine aspiring. But they did not have personal success. Some of these faces may be familiar to you. Professional success without personal success become a meaningless success. You got to maintain a mastery over yourself. So how do we bring about that personal transformation? One of the first things that you got to do, you got to find a purpose in life. The law is that you find the purpose, means will follow. Today, most people, the moment they have a goal to achieve, the next thing they look at is the means. The moment they look at the means, which is the capital, they're disappointed, they don't have it. But some of the most successful people who achieved success did not achieve success with a capital. You find the purpose, means will follow. That is the law of life. Today, the corporate world talks so much about goals and target. I'm sure you have heard talks about the goals, etc., from reputed purpose probably several times. More than goal is a purpose. There is target, there is goal, there is purpose. Now, what is purpose? When your target or the goal has a touch of unselfishness, a charitable disposition. How can I help my client rather than how can I increase my bank balance? When your focus is upon helping your client, that is what I would call purpose. Talking about goals, ideals, and purpose. Your purpose, ideals, and goals go through 3 steps of maturity in your mind. The first step is the most difficult one. Do you have a purpose? Ask yourself. You answer the question, for what are you doing what you're doing? Is it only to increase the bank balance, or you want to add value to the people and then as a byproduct you increase your turnover or bank balance? That is purpose. The 3 steps of maturity that the human mind go through is that when you have a person, let's say, instead of thinking about increasing your income, you tell yourself, I want to create employment to people. I want to employ 20 consultants. And I want to create a team so that I can help them to progress in the process. I can progress myself. That is what I would call purpose. So when you look at a purpose that you want to employ 20 people or 200 people maybe, the first thing is it appears to be impossible. Why does it happen? Because you make a grievous blunder of comparing yourself with the other outstanding successful people, and you say it's impossible. If you overcome that first step or the first I that is impossible, then comes the next step. That is, with all humility, you take the first step of moving forward. Then you realize that it is no more impossible, it is improbable. It may be difficult, but it's not impossible. And with that spirit, that attitude of unselfishness, when you continue your effort, you realize very soon that it's no more impossible, it is no more improbable, it is inevitable. It's a matter of time. But the problem is the first step. It is frightening. It's like grabbing a cobra. We have this famous parable in the Bible. When Moses was walking on the Sinai, he dropped the stick. The stick became a serpent, a cobra. And the oracle came from heaven. He says, Moses, grab the cobra. He was frightened. He took a step back. The voice came once again, come on, Moses, grab it. He was frightened. Third time the voice came, come on, Moses, grab it. He took a bold step and grabbed the cobra. Immediately the cobra turned into the famous staff of Moses. And what happened? The stick worked miracle. When the Israelites were fleeing for safety, he touched the rock, water gushed forth. Whereas when you take that bold step, you find miracle taking place in your life. What you thought you cannot achieve, you'll find accomplishing. You find the purpose, means will follow. That is the law of life. Now, when you want to achieve the goal or purpose, what happens? You got to make sure that your ambitions are not unrealistic, in the sense that it is not beyond your reach, in the sense that you got to make sure that you understand your abilities and capacities. Unrealistic ambition breeds stress. When you experience stress and strain, your abilities and potential remain dormant. You can't work towards it. Your talent gets suppressed. In fact, none of us lack the ability, none of us lack the capacity. Earlier speaker, Bhupinter, was talking about potential, discovering your inner potential. In fact, I would categorize the entire humanity into two. There are only two types of people in the world. They are the winners and who are the others? No. There are only two types of people in the world. They are the winners and potential winners. Don't brand yourself as a loser. You are a potential winner. You have the inherent potential. You got to discover it. Folks, if you go back, this paradigm shift, one of the objectives of these 3 days presentation is to bring about a paradigm shift, change of thinking. Now, when you're pursuing your ambition or ideal, you got to make sure that how to do the right thing. There are two things in life. One is, you got to do the right thing. A lot of people know how to do the right thing or what is the right thing to do, but it's quite different to do things right. To do the right thing is different from doing things right. So what is the secret of that professional success? The blueprint for right action, the blueprint for ideal action. Ideal action envisages two things. Number one, ideal action must generate energy. Number two, ideal action must avoid dissipation of existing energy. Many people carry the misconception that work makes you tired. Work can never make you tired. What is actually making you tired? It is a negative thought that is backing the work, the stressful thought. One of the medical journals that I read a while ago, the author was talking about the dynamics of tiredness. He said, if you entertain strong negative emotions, stressful negative emotion like anger, jealousy, hatred, etc., even for 10 minutes, you consume energy that is required for about 10 hours of physical labor. It is not the work that is making you tired, it is the negative thought associated with the work. Human being has got incredible potential. So how do we generate energy? Generation of energy depends upon the proper use of your body, mind, and intellect. What do you do with the body? What do you do with the mind? And what do you do with the intellect? Your physical body must perform continuous activity. Today, because of the advancement of the technology, what our grandparents and great-grandparents did with their body, we have machineries to do. As a result, we hardly use the body. Therefore, you got to make sure that exercise is a priority in your life. Your physical body must be kept in continuous activity. While the body performs dynamic action, the mind must be surrendered to the purpose that you have committed to yourself. When the mind is surrendered to the ideal or the purpose, you develop mental stamina. Mental stamina is that ability to endure the pain. The pain, what pain? Pain of discipline. Mental stamina is the ability to endure the pain of discipline. When the mind is surrendered to the ideal, only then it happens. While the intellect constantly visualizes reaching the goal, your intellect must indulge in the thought of fulfilling your purpose. So when the physical body performs dynamic action that is required of you to do, the mind is surrendered to the ideal, your intellect is continuously visualizing the goal, your entire being is focused in that one direction. There is tremendous power. Just as when light focuses in one direction, there is hydroelectric power. When light focuses in one direction, there is power. When water focuses in one direction, there is hydroelectric power. Similarly, if your thoughts, an average human being goes through nearly 70 to 80,000 thoughts on an average day. If your entire being is focused in one direction, there is tremendous power. That is the way you generate energy. Having generated energy, you must also be careful not to dissipate your energy. You got to avoid dissipation of energy. Dissipation of energy takes place three ways. Number one, regrets over the dead past. The mind has a tendency to constantly indulge in the past failures. The memories of the past failures swarm into the present action and destroy your concentration. Regrets over the dead past you got to avoid. Number two, anxieties of the unborn future. The moment your mind is preoccupied with achieving your result, you become anxious, your performance gets adversely affected. A classic example is you watch a cricketer, you watch a batsman go in the field to bat. You find brilliant batting performance until he comes to the zone of 90. The moment he comes to the zone of 90, what happens? He becomes nervous. His batting slows down. Why? Because his mind is upon the century. Yes, your intellect conceives the purpose, but you do not allow the mind to be anxious about the future. The third cause of dissipation of your energy is excitement in the living present. So therefore, clip the past, clip the future, and plunge into present activity. That is called concentration. That is focus. So if I were to summarize, what I would say is that what is the recipe for professional success? I would summarize into 5 words. Number one, concentration. Concentration is the capacity of your intellect to channelize the entire being into one direction. The mind's tendency is to be fickle like monkey. Mind behaves like a monkey, very restless. The 5 C's are, number one, concentration. The second of the 5 C's is consistency and perseverance. Remember, those people who are more successful are not necessarily more intelligent than you. A lot of people carry the impression you got to be intelligent to be successful. No. It is the consistency and perseverance. Now, those people who are COT and TOTs are not necessarily more intelligent than you, but they are more perseverant. They overcome the fear of rejection. When you have experienced the fear of rejection, that is when you lose your consistency and perseverance. Third C is commitment. Commitment arises when you understand the emergency, when you understand the value, when you understand the importance, the seriousness of you setting and pursuing a purpose. Friends, God forbid, if you go to a doctor, and the doctor diagnoses you and discovers that there's something radically wrong with your kidney, and he gives you 3 months to live. And he also tells you that there is a very rare treatment that you can do. If you start the treatment immediately, he gives you 90% chances of survival. What will be your commitment to find the treatment? You will never leave any stone unturned until you find the remedy. Why? Because you understand the seriousness, you understand the emergency. That is commitment. The 4th C is control. Control is gaining a mastery over yourself. It is not enough to have the professional success. Personal success is all about gaining a mastery over your emotions, gaining a mastery over your desires, gaining a mastery over your ego. When you gain the self-mastery, that is what you call self-control. And the 5th C is courage. Courage is not absence of failure. Courage is not absence of fear. Courage is mastery over fear. It is the ability to conquer fear. It is the ability to control fear. A successful person or a courageous person also has fear, but he has been trained to control his fear. So concentration, consistency, commitment, control, and courage. These are the 5 C's of professional performance, peak professional performance. So you clip the past, clip the future, and plunge into the present activity and focus. Then you realize that your paradigm changes. You begin to look at life differently. If you leave this conference with that change in the paradigm, you'll realize that these 3 days of your effort here has been worthwhile. Those are the dynamics of self-mastery, professional success, as well as the personal mastery. Thank you very much.